Welcome to The Real with Joseph Labman. I am Joseph Labman. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Real, taking time out of your day to come watch this episode. I really appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe for me. I'd really appreciate that as well. That's the best way you can support this channel and help me grow my content and grow this channel to where I'd like it to be. Everybody hit the like button for me on the way in on this video today. That also helps promote this video more in the algorithms, helps grow this channel more as well. Please share this content. I would really appreciate that. My guests would as well. If you would please share this episode with someone you know that maybe is interested in the topic we're talking about today. Please leave a comment below as well. We'd love to hear your guys' feedback. You can interact with myself and the guest on the panel and the live chat as well. Whatever we're talking about, just leave a comment there in the live chat. Pop in and say hello. We'll put it on the screen for you. And yeah, without further ado, let's get to the show. Welcome back to The Real with Joseph Labman. I am Joseph Labman. Hope you guys are having a great Thursday. Unexpected live today. Was not expecting to do anything today on the show. I've actually been enjoying the last 2 weeks, growing more and going back to old places, and people paid attention to my social media and know my channel. The main purpose of this channel is for helping people with mental health, with challenges, anxiety, and panic, and the things that I've overcame in my life. And but we also do sports as well. But I'm going through a lot of some other stuff recently, and some great things that I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys one day. But all of a sudden today, I'm sitting there. I just got back home a little bit ago, and I see some breaking news from Kevin Stefanski today. So let's get into it. Breaking news from Kevin Stefanski today. He said it himself. Kevin Stefanski will remain the play caller for the 2024 season. This kind of comes as somewhat a surprise for a lot of people. It was a surprise to me because the Browns, or Kevin Stefanski rather, fired Alex Van Pelt, his old OC, who was content being not the play caller, but being the OC. Kevin's been the play caller for the last 4 years since he's been in Cleveland. Fired Alex Van Pelt, brought in Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey runs a much more different scheme, a little more diverse, a little more spread, a little more fits more of Deshaun Watson's skill set, which is the whole purpose of bringing in Ken Dorsey. So you bring in a whole new mind. You fire Van Pelt, who came from kind of the same West Coast system that Kevin Stefanski comes from. You bring in a whole new mind. You bring in Tommy Rees, who's an OC in Alabama. You bring in Andy Dickerson, a new offensive line coach. You have this whole new staff, a new running back coach as well, Deuce Staley. And a lot of people expected, like myself, that he would be the play caller, that Ken Dorsey would be the play caller. But Kevin Stefanski today, in a surprise, comes out and says he will remain the play caller in 2024. And so this is breaking news from Kevin Stefanski today. Here's Kevin Stefanski at practice today on his decision on remaining the play caller.
Tony, you can tell everybody I'm going to call the plays this year, so I'm going to get that out of the way. I know everybody's interested. And any decision I make for our football team, I take a lot of information in. I try to listen to a lot of people and make decisions. And ultimately, what I feel really, really confident in is our offensive staff. I feel really strongly about Coach Dorsey and the entire offensive staff. So we'll continue to be an operation that works together. It's never been a one-man show, so I just want to make sure that was I know Tony's going to answer, so I want to get it out there before that.
So there you have it, Kevin Stefanski sharing there why he will remain the offensive play caller. And one thing he said there, he goes, I feel confident in my staff. And he really breaks down a lot of his decision breaks down a lot of the things to what makes his decision. Like he said, he thinks about it a lot. I'm really curious, though. He's very confident in his staff. He says he's going to continue to use the same system that they've been doing. So what my whole thing is, my first reaction to all this is what was the purpose in firing Alex Van Pelt? Because here's my initial reaction to all this. Ken Dorsey, right, runs a different type of, comes from a more spread scheme than we've seen, more RPO action, more in the gun with the quarterbacks. A lot more of the things that Deshaun ran when he was in college and in Houston. Some similarities. Some teams run some of the same concepts, but a much different philosophy in terms of the plays and the style and the scheme of the offense, just the style of offense, how they like to attack certain teams, or how they like to attack opponents. Excuse me. And so Kevin Stefanski's been running more of the play action West Coast style, like I said, with Alex Van Pelt as the OC for the last 4 years, and they've had success with it. But I think with Deshaun Watson's skill set and just kind of a lot of that offense that we've seen the last 4 years, just at times they've tried new creative things that just didn't really work out well. The little jet sweeps that went 20 yards backwards, and a lot of things that just they tried certain trick plays and stuff. But a lot of the offense is very vanilla, right? It's very just more on the run game, especially when they had the great offensive line. They had Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb before injuries when Kareem still had some tread left on those legs. They were able to do that, especially in 2020. When especially you have a guy like Baker Mayfield, who's a middle of the road quarterback, and you kind of had to put him in a system and kind of keep him contained a little bit. With Deshaun Watson, though, it's a different skill set. He's much more talented than Baker Mayfield. He's much more 6'3", not 6 foot, 225 pounds, athletic, and use his legs. Got a nice arm, can make all the throws. And so I'm really curious. My initial reaction on this: how can Kevin Stefanski call plays in a system that he's never called plays in before? That's what I'm really curious. And if he is, how does he make that work? Because it can go. Here's how I look at this: they're telling us you bring in Ken Dorsey, right, to change the offense. I'm assuming, right? Are we all? That's what we all assume, that they brought in Ken Dorsey, Tommy Reese, and Deuce Staley and Andy Dickerson to change the offense, to make it better and more dynamic, and more fits better around Deshaun's skill set and the players on their team than they had, to enhance that differently than they did in the past 4 years. And so if they are calling different plays, a newer scheme, Kevin Stefanski's never called plays in that scheme. And so I'm really curious about that, because to me that's somewhat of a big deal, in my opinion. Because before Kevin Stefanski came to Cleveland, he had been calling plays in that West Coast system, play action, Kubiak style, his whole career. He grew up in that system as an assistant coach. He eventually became the play caller in Minnesota, had success, and brought the system here to Cleveland and was the head coach play caller and had some success. They made 2 playoff runs. They made the playoffs twice. He won Coach of the Year twice. I like Kevin Stefanski. I think Kevin Stefanski as a CEO head coach is really good. I do have concerns, though, about a head coach being a play caller. Because if you look at the success rate of winning Super Bowls and the amount of coaches that have done that in the last 20 years, like I broken down in the show before, it's not many, right? It's not many. Frank Reich did it the 1 year with the Eagles. Sean McVay did it with the Rams when they were $9 million over the cap, and they went all in for that championship because the Super Bowl was in LA. And Andy Reid, who took over at the age of 40 in 1997 for the Philadelphia Eagles, it took him all the way till 2019, I believe it was, to win his first Super Bowl. So 22 years later. So unless you're ability to pay $9 million over the cap like the Rams did and go make all those trades and trade their whole future away at that time, Frank Reich had the one miracle run with the Philly special, and then Andy Reid, took him 22 years to finally win a Super Bowl as a play caller and a head coach. So there's not a high success rate of this. And I go back to the point I made on this show months ago. I reached out, and I got to say his name, but some people know what I'm talking about. I reached out and asked he's a former 3-time national championship coach. Was an assistant under Urban Meyer, not head coach, 3-time national championship coach. He was an assistant under Urban Meyer. And I asked him, I said, hey, what's your thoughts on a head coach being a play caller? And he went on to say, he told me, he goes, you don't want your play caller to feel the emotions of the game, right? You want to be a chess player. And head coaches oftentimes, they have to feel the emotions of the game because they're the head coach of the team. The whole team is theirs. They have to get the team up. They have to be motivators. They have to get the team, when the team's down, they have to get them up and get them going. You don't want your play caller. That's why a lot of play callers are up in the booth, because they don't want to feel the emotions of the game. They don't want to impact their decision making. You want your decision making to be crystal clear. You want to be able to think and see things and think, and then stay poised and even kill, because you make better decisions, right? And the momentum has to be calculated as a play caller as well. And that's also something your play caller can't have the emotions, because he has to be able to watch the momentum, see the momentum, and have that calculation, right? And also the head coach, deals with everything. He deals with the whole team. He gets pulled in many different directions throughout the week. One minute he's got to pop in this meeting. One minute he's got to do this. One minute he's got to do that. He's the head coach of an NFL franchise or in college. College is a lot worse because you have to do recruiting and stuff. And that's why a lot of coaches are jumping from college to the NFL like Jim Harbaugh. But again, there's a lot that goes into it. What makes a great head coach, though, is the staff he puts around him. And so that's why I was a little surprised. I'm surprised by this news today, like a lot of people are. And like my man, shout out to Browns by Brad. He even wrote there on his, let me get this off the screen, right down there. He says, breaking news, Kevin Stefanski will call plays this year. Not new OC Ken Dorsey, a surprise. And yeah, it was a surprise for a lot of us. I think for a lot of us fans today, media members, I think it's kind of a surprise. Some people will say they didn't expect it, which, okay. But I think, like I said, what makes a great head coach is the staff he puts around him. And he brought in a whole new staff. And I like all the guys he brought in, right? I like Ken Dorsey's background. He's a former quarterback in the NFL, was with Cam Newton when Cam Newton had his MVP season in Carolina, I think in 2016, I believe, back then. Yeah, he's been around a long time. Tommy Reese has called plays at some level at Alabama. He was at the play caller last year. He has play calling experience. I like Tommy Reese. Andy Dickerson comes from the Sean McVay tree. Also replaced Bill Callahan, but he also spent a couple years with Bill Callahan as assistant coach and learned a lot from him. I like Andy Dickerson a lot. I think he'd be a really good coach. Was with Pete Carroll the last few years in Seattle as well. Deuce Staley, I think, is a really good running back coach. And so you bring in this whole new staff, but then you're going to say, I'm still calling the plays. And so I just broke down, you guys, too, why I'm not a big fan of my head coach calling the plays is because of all the different things going on. I'd rather my head coach be a CEO. Take a look at Ryan Day this year, for instance, right? Ryan Day's on the hot seat this year. He's lost 3 years in a row to the team up north. He has to win that game this year. He has to go far this year. You look at the roster, they spent over $20+ million on their team this year. They have to win. What did Ryan Day do? He said, you know what? I'm going to go out. I'm going to give up this play calling, and I'm going to go out, and I'm going to go get a Chip Kelly. Initially got Bill O'Brien, but you know what? I'm going to go out and get a Chip Kelly and pull him, a former head coach who wants to be a play caller. I'm going to bring him in and give him the play calling. Right? He was going to give Bill O'Brien the play calling, too, for Bill O'Brien left and took the job at Boston College. But why did Ryan Day do that? And Ryan Day said why he did that at the spring game. And he said it for all the same reasons I just said on that coach told me months ago that I brought up in this last season. I think it was already back then I brought it up, back in the wintertime, is you get pulled in so many different directions. There's so many things you have to go to manage and go through. Games come down to little drives and little plays that make up that can win or lose you a game, right? And Ryan Day, he said it. You look at them the last few years and those close games they lost, especially against Michigan, it came down to 1 or 2 plays that they blew, right? Go back to 2022, the 4th and 5 when they went to punt it, right? Ryan Day was the play caller. I think he regrets that play call. He probably wish he had it back and was a little more aggressive at that time when they had the momentum of that game. But again, the emotions can get to you, right? And you go back to last year, some key plays, right? Some bad calls, and your quarterback not really developing too, but it cost you that game as well. And so you go back to some other games, the Georgia game, a few plays here and there. You can go back to a lot of games. Like Ryan said, it's just 1 or 2 plays to get you over the hump. That's why he had to give up the play calling. And so Kevin Stefanski brings in a whole new staff. He brings in his Chip Kelly and Ken Dorsey, right? Brings in terms of bringing a new offensive mind. And I'm going to keep the play calling. It's very confusing to me. I don't understand it. I just don't. If you wanted to remain the play caller, why not just keep the same staff you had and just maybe bring in a different, I guess Ken Dorsey's okay with this. I'm surprised Ken Dorsey signed up for this. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I thought Ken Dorsey maybe could have got a job as calling the plays down the road somewhere else, but maybe he had another offer out there. I don't know. But I'm confused. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm curious what you guys think by this because I'm really torn on this because I just don't. And I want to know what system is he talking about? The system they've used, I totally agree. You can never have enough minds in a room, right? Enough voices, people giving input. But when you're out there in the middle of a game, how many voices are going through that headset? Because there's always been the thing about the analytical thing, the percentages and all that on plays we've heard about that since the day they were hired, right? So is there somebody up in the booth giving them the probability of a play call? Um, is there somebody else? Is it Tommy Reese or Ken Dorsey going to say, "Hey, I think we should do this," but then Kevin's thinking, "Well, I want to do this," because that's not very healthy on a sideline, right? That's not going to work long term at all. And so I'm kind of curious what their system really is and how it really works. How does their play calling how does the play call get out? Does Kevin look at his play sheet and say, okay, let's say 2nd and 6. Let me go down to my second down play calls, right? In the middle of the field. Let's say we're on the 40-yard line. And he looks at his play sheet and he sees some of the calls they have from the scouting report that week and put it in their play sheets, some of the plays they like against the defense and the scheme they're going against, right? Who makes that call? How does that process work for him? I'm really curious how that works. Is it more of, okay, hey Ken, I want to call this. What do you think about it? And does Ken Dorsey say, I think we should, yeah, go ahead and call it? Or does Ken say, I think we should run this? And Kevin says, all right, we'll run that. All right. I'm really curious because if he's going to keep checking in with Ken Dorsey every play, and Ken Dorsey, this is his, you brought in Ken Dorsey to bring new influence on the offense, to bring new flavor, right? New schemes, new plays, things we haven't seen here in the last 4 years, especially when you have Deshaun Watson back healthy. So why not just make Ken Dorsey the play caller if it's his stuff he's bringing in, and you haven't called stuff in that? Because could this be a scenario where Kevin Stefanski wants to keep some of the things that he's got him the job, right? We see this a lot of times with head coaches. They're a little prideful. They want to, and I'm not blaming Kevin Stefanski. He's 2-time coach of the year. He's made 2 playoff appearances. The bar was set pretty low when he took this job because of how bad it's been in Cleveland for so long. But he's exceeded, I think, some expectations in terms of getting in the playoffs twice in the last 4 years. That's that's above average of what we've seen here in Cleveland. We never had a coach of the year in Cleveland in my lifetime. I'm 24 years old. And so it's almost kind of like I want to keep some of the things that had got me the job, that keeps me. Does he feel safer remaining the play caller? I don't get, because if he gives up play calling to Ken Dorsey and they go out and win, 9-10 games or maybe less and miss the playoffs, his ass might get fired because he's the one that made the change, right? And so I'm really curious to see where this goes. It's going to be really fascinating to watch this play out this season, because if they start off the season, let's say 2-3 or 3-4 or 500 going into like week 6 or something, and the offense is just stuttering, and they're barely winning some games, and the defense has been strong and kind of carrying them. What do you do if you're Kevin Stefanski? Do you give it the play calling full time to Ken Dorsey to see if you get a shift, right? How does Deshaun Watson feel about all this? I think that's something to ask too. I know Deshaun Watson likes Kevin Stefanski a lot, and I like Kevin Stefanski too. And I think Kevin Stefanski, as a pure play caller, is a good play caller. But when you're a head coach and a play caller, both, that's a totally different ball game. There's a lot more, a lot more to that. You're a head coach of an entire team now, not just one unit. You're on the sideline with the headset, right? You make all the decisions for everything. What penalties we're going to take, what we're going to do here, when we're going to call timeouts, who's subbing what in, you're the head coach of the team, dude. You run everything. And so this whole dynamic to me is very fascinating, because he brought in all new minds, and then he's going to keep the play calling. I don't know. Usually when you make that kind of change, when you fire your OC, usually when you bring the new one, you make him the play caller. In this same scenario, when your head coach has been the play caller for so long and he fires the OC, usually you bring a new OC, and that OC becomes the play caller, because that OC, you brought in that OC for a reason, right? You brought him in for what? New. We want new. We want different. We want to elevate, right? I don't think Ken Dorsey doesn't come from that West Coast generic Kubiak 1990 system we've been running. He ain't come from that, right? We want new flavor, this the stuff you have to do in the NFL nowadays with the talent. And when you have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, who is as dynamic and versatile as he is, as multiple as Deshaun is, you need, if you had Joe Flacco here still running that same system, yeah, I could see that. You might as well just kept it all the same. But Deshaun's a different type of quarterback, a different skill set, right? And so I'm really curious to see how Kevin's going to call plays with this new thing, because if Kevin's calling plays here and there, and then he's letting Ken Dorsey call some plays on some occasion and some points of the game, I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. It reminds me of you remember when Ohio State won the national championship in 2014, right? And Tom Herman was the play caller, right? And they go on, they were smoking, they beat Alabama, they were on fire, that offense, lit up Wisconsin, beat Alabama, marched into the national championship against Oregon, ran it right down the throat, won the national championship. Tom Herman takes a job at Texas, right? And because he did such a phenomenal job, he got a job. And so Urban Meyer brings in Ed Warner. And Ed Warner is not really one of the more likable coaches, it seems like, the people are high on. I'm not talking about it, I'm not bashing Ed Warner or anything, but some of the things that like Zach Smith and some other guys have said on their shows that coach with them, players, that, it was not a great hire. And he was already in the building, but he made him the OC. But Urban Meyer that year, at one point, going into that next season, when they had the whole quarterback battle between JT was back healthy, was Cardale Jones, and Braxton Miller was moved to receiver, right? And so it was between JT and Cardale. And he goes with Cardale Jones because it was more to the emotional. Cardale just won the national championship, and so he goes, we got to remain with Cardale. Although JT did a lot of different things better than Cardale, and was a lot more fluid in the offense that they ran. But I remember they said going into the first game against Virginia Tech, Urban Meyer brought a new OC because he lost his other one, and he had Ed Warner call, I believe, the pass plays, and he had Urban Meyer ran the run plays, or it could have been vice versa. They had two different guys calling plays. One guy would call the pass plays, and one guy would call the run plays. And it was an absolute shit show. An absolute shit show. It was awful. To the point where that team that season in 2015 coming out the national championship was probably the greatest team to never win it. You go look back at the history of teams in college football, maybe in sports in general, in football, the sport of football in general in the last 25 years. That Ohio State team, the amount of guys they had on that team coming off that national championship, how loaded they were, how many guys they had, for them to not win that championship that year, to go back to back and start rolling on a dynasty run, was one of the biggest debacles ever. It was an absolute disservice to those players too, the way Urban ran it that year. And I think Urban Meyer's an all-time great coach, but the way he set that season up, they were set up to fail from the get-go. And why were they set up to fail? Because the way the dynamic was in the play calling. The defense was great. The offense that year was lagging. That's what the problem was that year. Go back and watch that season. You had all that talent. You had Zeke Elliott, you had Mike Thomas, you had all these guys on offense, and you couldn't barely. I mean, there was games they were winning 20-something to 15 or something. 30 points against. They won by maybe 10 points against Nebraska or something. Something crazy like that. Teams that they should have been smoking. And a lot of it, because when you watch those games, the offense at times just stuttered, had no rhythm, had no consistency, had no games. They just looked like duds in a lot of games because they had the way they were set up. And so I'm really curious. That reminded me. I remembered that today. That just thinking of that because of how Kevin explained their system today. Although I'd like to hear him explain it more about he's going to remain the play caller, but you brought in Ken Dorsey, so it's kind of a collaborative effort. He says he pretty much said it was like a collaborative effort. So I'm really curious in all this. How he's going to how does the play calling actually work? Who makes the final decision? I'm assuming it's Kevin because he's remaining the play caller. But again, is it going to be where Ken's calling some run plays or pass, or maybe Ken's calling some pass plays and Kevin's going to call the run plays? Is it like that? I mean, how is this going? Because Kevin Stefanski trying to call plays in a newer scheme and newer offense that he's never called plays in. I don't. How does that work? I mean, You know what I mean? Like, how do you? He's not comfortable in calling plays in that system. Like it's different plays, it's different formulas, it's different everything. That's what we were told was going to be happening. That's why you fired Alex Van Pelt, who was perfectly content being the OC and not the play caller for the last 4 years. So you fired Alex Van Pelt and you brought in Ken Dorsey and all this new staff because we're assuming you're supposed to be bringing in new scheme and new offensive plays and, like I said, newer things that we've seen, an elevated version and a much more diverse, multiple version that fits the Sean skill set of the offense than we've seen for the last 4 years. But I'm going to remain the play caller. I don't know. My confidence meter going into the season was a lot higher before today. I'll just leave it at that. I still like this team. I'm not saying this is going to be the downfall of the Browns or they're not making the playoffs or any of that. I'm not saying that. But my confidence meter going into today was a lot higher on the Browns this season because I thought Ken Dorsey was going to be the play caller. And I thought Ken Dorsey was going to be the guy sitting there talking to Deshaun. He's the play caller, talking to the quarterback throughout the entirety of the game. You got to remember when the offense is on the sideline, they got to sit and go over stuff and make adjustments and all that. You're making adjustments throughout the game. You're not making adjustments just at halftime. You're making adjustments. Adjustments are being made almost every drive. You're going back and looking at. That's why they have the tablets. They're going back and looking at the plays. Anybody that's been on a sideline or played football at any level, you know that. And at least I hope you're on a good team. With some good coaches, maybe you know that. But you're constantly making adjustments on the sideline. Constantly. I remember back when I played, we won a national championship when I was 13 years old. We were playing against older teams. And if Zach's watching this, Zach, shout out to you, or Keandre's watching this, or Coach John, when we came off the sidelines after each drive, even if we scored, we were constantly talking about different things we were going to do. Constantly. We were constantly talking about different adjustments we're going to make. Let's try this next time. Next time, maybe call this play this way or call it here. Like, you're constantly making adjustments throughout the game. But it's a lot better when your play caller is able to sit with the quarterback and really go deep into that. Tom Brady had Josh McDaniels next to him calling the plays for years. If you go back to that Super Bowl when they beat the Rams, they had the Patriots did the little thing with Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick explaining the last drive that won in that Super Bowl. And you look at those clips. Josh McDaniels was sitting there on the sideline during that Super Bowl, and they needed a drive to win that game. That's all they needed. That's the way that game was going. And they had to be crystal clear on the drive they wanted. They had to be perfect. But they were able to prep that before they went out on the field because Josh McDaniels, the play caller, was able to sit there with Tom Brady and talk to him about it and with the players for however long. They had a lot of time to sit and talk about it, and they put together a phenomenal personnel package and different plays they were going to call and went out there and won that Super Bowl on a beautiful game-winning drive. If Josh McDaniels was the head coach of that team, that would never have happened. He would have over there and talked to him for a couple minutes, but he has to get back to the sideline and watch the game because he's the head coach. That's why I said the head coach gets pulled in many different directions, not just during the week, but during the game. And so we're calling new stuff this year, and he's calling it. And he's never called a lot of he's been in the same system for the last 20-something years, his whole career, whatever, since 06, I think he got hired. I don't know, in Minnesota. He's been in the same Kubiak umbrella, that system, for his whole career. And all he did was just bring that here to Cleveland. Right? And it worked for 4 years. It got to a point. Right? We got to a point in 4 years. But there's a reason why we thought there was a reason why you fired Alex Van Pelt and cleaned out the staff is because you wanted to do something different now because you have Deshaun Watson, a quarterback with that. He's never had a quarterback with Deshaun's skill set in his career. He's had the Kirk Cousins, the Baker Mayfields, the Joe Flaccos, the Jacoby Brissetts, right? All those guys are pretty similar in their skill sets. More of the pocket passers. Baker's a shorter quarterback, so you got to kind of help him out a little bit, roll him out of the pocket more. Right. But Baker thrived more in the system, more of that kind of spread system in Tampa last year, to say it. But you usually want a guy that's 6'3" pocket passer, and that Kirk Cousins is perfect for that system. That's why him and Kevin Stefanski and Kirk had great success because Kirk was perfect for that system. But Deshaun Watson's skill set is much different than Kirk Cousins. He's a lot more talented, and you could do a lot more with him. You can really give teams a lot more headache with his legs, RPO action, just so many different things you could do. And so I'm really curious to see how this is all going to play out. And I really want to know more from Kevin Stefanski. I wish one of these reporters or somebody really, if they get one on one with him or somebody can ask him, like, can you explain to us what your system during the game looks like? Like when you're calling the play, looking at when the play's over, when you're about to go out there for your first play in the drive, how does it go from there? Right? Who do you talk to? How does the decision making work on the play? What's the processing there? I would be really curious to know that. And I'd really be curious to know too. I wish one of these media members would ask him as well when the offense comes off the field and you're on the sideline. How are the in-game adjustments going? Do you feel like you as a play caller, Kevin, is you and Deshaun are going really in depth and getting on the same page and really going deep on that sideline when you have that time off the field before you go back out on the field again? And so these are all my questions today, my reaction to all this, to this breaking news today. And so I'm curious what you guys think. Me personally, like I said, my confidence level today is lower on the Browns than it was yesterday. I just don't know how this all works. I got many questions about this. Why did you bring in Ken Dorsey, but you're still keeping the plays? What does Deshaun think about this? Honestly, does he really like this? What does Ken Dorsey think of this? I mean, I'm really curious about a lot of this. What do you guys think of it? I'm really curious what you guys think. I'm sure there's maybe some fans maybe agree with me. And I'm sure some fans maybe don't really care. Or maybe they like Kevin Stefanski and want to remain the play caller. But my only question to that would be is, okay, I agree with you. Kevin's been a really good head coach. I do agree with that. I like Kevin as a head coach. But he's a head coach, right? As a play caller, though, and you just brought in Ken Dorsey, and we were told this is supposed to be a new. Why would you fire Van Pelt, bring in Ken Dorsey and Tommy Reese and A.D. Dickerson, but in particular and Deuce Staley, but in particular, why would you bring in Ken Dorsey? Because he fits his style of offense that he's came up from his background with Cam Newton. He played the game in the NFL and in college. He was a former player himself, played quarterback. You brought him in to build an offense around Deshaun Watson, right? And so we were told by players in minicamp, going back 2 months ago, we're about to be in training camp. We're going to hear more from players now, that there was a lot newer things in the offense, a lot different things. There were some similarities, which is fine. You keep some plays, some like basic calls and stuff that many teams all have. But a lot of your different concepts were going to be different. The schemes, certain down and distance calls, certain different ways you attack defenses now, because you have Deshaun Watson back healthy, right? And for a full season now. And so we assumed that's why you brought Ken Dorsey in, was to bring his offense in here and to call the plays in the offense that he's familiar with. And so I would ask those people that like Kevin remaining the play caller, how do you feel about him calling plays and some of that newerness of the offense and some of the, calling the plays in this newer playbook we're told about? Because he's been calling things he's probably never called before in his career. So how does he feel about that as well? And so those are a lot of my questions today about this, my reaction to all this. I'm sure this will be an ongoing thing throughout the season. I'll have some other guests on pretty soon. We'll get their reaction to it. But also, before I get out of here today, I wanted to touch on Amari Cooper spoke today. Real quick, Amari Cooper said today, obviously you guys know there was the ongoing thing the last few months with Amari wanting the contract extension. Him and the Browns couldn't really agree on an extension. I think Amari wanted 4 or 5 years, or 4 years rather, maybe 3-4 years. He wanted a longer one than the Browns wanted to give him. I think the Browns wanted to give maybe probably fewer years because Amari is 30 years old. And usually receivers go to about the age of 32. The other day, Amari Cooper and the Browns agreed on renegotiating his deal. He'll be on a 1-year, $25 million deal, reconstruction his contract. So after this year, Amari Cooper will be a free agent. And Amari spoke today, and Amari Cooper said that he is, quote, content with the new deal and wants to stay in Cleveland past the 2024 season. Cooper, who just turned 30 in June, skipped minicamp in search of a new deal and is entering the final year of his contract. Cooper's new deal is fully guaranteed $20 million base, half of which was turned into a signing bonus and added $5 million in incentives. Cooper said today, quote, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it," said Cooper. I like the guys. I like the camaraderie of the team. I like Deshaun. I like Kevin. He gives me the ball, so I definitely want to be here. So Amari Cooper today, like I said there, as I just read his quote there, he says he wants to be here. He says he wants to remain a Brown. He'd like to be here long term. If I'm the Browns, I don't go more than 2 years. I think a lot of maybe if Amari goes out there this year and has some unbelievable season, then you probably have to pay him maybe an extra year on the deal than you want to give him. But if Amari, goes out this year and is good like he's always been, but maybe not like you could see some little bit of decline. Maybe you kind of look at maybe in 2 years, I don't think he'll be the same guy. Then you might be looking at a scenario where he walks after the season. You just have to let him go. And so that's a risk again, because obviously there's been a lot of the Brandon Ayuk smoke going out there because Brandon Ayuk, who's younger, really good receiver, elite, really great receiver in the NFL for the 49ers, wants an extension, won't get an extension from the 49ers so far, and has requested a trade from the 49ers. And so, there's been a lot of rumors about would the Browns swap him. Could they trade Cooper for Brandon Ayuk? Would the 49ers do that? I don't know, but it seems like Amari will be. He's obviously here for this season, and I think a lot of it just depends on how this all looks this season. But again, like we talked about today with the offense, how's this all going to look this year? So how does that affect the players as well? Could this be an Ohio State 2015 type scenario like I explained earlier, or could it all go well? I don't know. I have a lot of questions about a lot of this stuff. So that's all I got for you guys today. Just a quick live reaction to what happened today. I don't know if they were Bree or Greenbrier at training camp today. Kevin Stefanski spoke to the media, like I said, and announced he will remain the play caller in 2024. So that's my reaction to it today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out of here. Gone.